All right, thank you everyone for your patience. Closed session went a little bit longer than we expected, so again, thank you for being patient here. This is the regular meeting of the School Board 25, District 25 School Board. It is September 2nd, 2021. We'll call this meeting to order. I see a quorum. Madam Secretary, if you note the roll, we'll stand and re-say the Pledge of Allegiance. Just re-say it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We'll move to recognitions and presentations. Have none. So we do have community input, and it's 3 today. So we'll start with the statement here. This is the opportunity for the community to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have comment to make about business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and operate its meetings in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow the following guidelines. Address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. Identify yourself and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allotted time in order to conserve time to speak and the maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. Please be respectful and courteous, and the board requests that you not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during public comment period, but we do listen intently, and we appreciate we appreciate the input from our community. So with that, we'll start with Karen Raddick. Karen Raddick, I'm sorry.
Hello. I'm here again tonight to reiterate what I said here last month, despite that right now there's a mask mandate in effect. The votes that you take on public health issues, such as masking in schools, should be made by following the guidance that is provided by the appropriate outlets, not by your own opinions. None of you is an epidemiologist, infectious disease specialist, or public health official. As such, you should never put yourself in charge of interpreting the data because you're not qualified to do so. I hope you've seen around the country what a disaster it is to bring children back to schools without masks. You can say that there are layered mitigations, but practically speaking, that's not true. Here's a picture of my first grader at her desk. She's not 3 feet apart from the children next to her, and all the desks face in toward each other. In what way is that satisfying any mitigation strategies besides masking? And this is not unique to her classroom or her grade. No one loves wearing a mask, but it's well documented that universal mask wearing is the best possible mitigation for unvaccinated groups. And the children in our district are primarily too young to be vaccinated. I'd like anyone who claims that mask wearing causes harm to provide data that shows that medical diagnoses or hospitalization resulting from wearing their mask, and then compare that to the data related to COVID diagnoses, hospitalizations, and deaths in any location or population. And I know the next response is that it negatively impacts social emotional health of kids. I work with children feeling the mental health impacts of the last 18 months. I see exactly how hard this pandemic is for children. But with certainty, mask wearing is not causing this. It's the disruption to their normal lives and schedules, not being able to go to school or to sports or activities. It's the struggles their parents face. It's not that they're wearing a mask in school. For those who say masks are a detriment to effective education, I would argue that it's far less disruptive than COVID infections and quarantining. We all want our kids in school. Universal mask wearing facilitates that. Several who spoke last month cited the survival rate of children with COVID. Thank goodness that number is quite large to date. I would suggest that death is not the only thing we're worried about with COVID, but that aside, even that small statistic means that if there's an outbreak here, one of our kids could die and many be hospitalized. Unless it's 0, that's what that means. Anyone here willing to offer up your kid to represent that statistic? Do any of you who are parents want to be the ones sitting in the ICU with your kid telling you you could have prevented this easily? Finally, if you're not making decisions by consulting the appropriate authorities, then you're making decisions politically, right? So if you feel it's more appropriate to make decisions in the midst of a public health crisis by representing the wishes of those you represent, then by all means, find out what those people actually want. After the July vote, I spoke to many parents of District 25 students, and every single one of the people I spoke to said they would send their children to school in masks when it was optional. So if you think the few anti-maskers here are representative of the majority, you are wrong. This is not what the majority thinks. You need to be aware of that, and you need to do something about it the next time it's up to you to represent this district. It's not about you or about who's loudest at these board meetings. If you think it's right to vote politically, then please find out what the community actually wants. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen. We'll go to Karen. Is it Wolf now? Is that a W? Is it Karen Wolf? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Ooh, it's at the right height. All right, hi everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight mainly to ask the board to take back local control of decisions for our school district. The state does not understand what is going on in school districts better than the districts themselves. The situation in one community is not the same as in another. So what happens when SD25 doesn't need the measures anymore? If you continue to give away your power, you'll be forced by the state to follow them anyway. How can you ensure you're doing what is best for students if you're not making the decisions? Not every city or school district is the same, so why are you letting the state dictate to you as though we are the same as everywhere else? If it's happening now with a lot of these mitigations, what's to stop the state from saying that every school employee must get a vaccine or every student must get a vaccine to stay in school? And it won't matter if a child has adverse reactions or can't take vaccines for other reasons. It won't matter if it's dangerous for them because it will be for the greater good. So the state will be mandating you to possibly hurt students in this school district. And if it's happening for a disease that does have a very high survival rate, it could happen with anything. What's to stop them from saying that everybody who enters a building must have a flu vaccine or get tested for TB? Or even to come to an activity night, do we have to get tested for HIV? Or does every student have to get a whooping cough vaccine to protect from possible infection of any siblings at home? For anyone who says that this wouldn't happen, and that we would recognize if we were crossing a line, I think we have to admit that lines have already been crossed. Our schools are already giving preferential treatment to students who've been vaccinated while discriminating against those who are waiting for clinical trials to finish, and with no scientific basis for this unequal treatment. And teachers in this district are now required to get the vaccine or be subject to weekly testing or be fired. And these are state directives, not decisions made by anybody sitting up here. This broad government control is going in a direction that doesn't seem to have the best interests of the D25 students in mind. So I implore you to take back your power. It's my understanding that IDPH does not have health authority in the schools, and ISBE does not have the power to remove recognition status. There are 2 bills in the House and Senate that would give that power, but they don't have it now. And you may recognize that the executive order is possibly illegal as well, since we're about 1.5 years past the legally allowed 30-day emergency declaration. So I'm urging you to take back your power and make decisions locally. Otherwise, why are any of you sitting here? What purpose are you serving? You weren't elected to take orders from the state of Illinois. You were elected to make local decisions based on local factors, wants, and needs in our local district. So I'm asking you to join the other districts in Illinois that are reclaiming their authority, and then make decisions. ISBE and IDPH don't truly have power. You're choosing to give it to them as you insist on following this unlawful executive order. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Next, we have Christy Withrow.
Good evening. I wrote something down this time so I don't swear. I am here to make a formal request of the board. Every staff member who wanted to get the vaccine had the opportunity during the well-coordinated, exceptional effort by our leadership in February of this year. Dr. Bynes stated in a previous board meeting, I believe on July 15th, that our number of vaccinated staff is very high. So that just leaves a minority of teachers and staff that are not vaccinated. So it might be safe to say that any district personnel who has not already received one of the incredibly accessible and free vaccines likely has a personal, religious, or a medical reason. I'm asking our board to keep doing your jobs as our local elected officials. The law is on your side, and the majority will stand behind your decision. I'm asking tonight that our board overrule the governor's executive order in regards to the mandatory vaccination and/or testing of our teachers and staff. I ask that a motion be added to the next board meeting that will, 1, protect the privacy of our teachers, 2, prohibit the discrimination of our teachers based on vaccination status, and 3, protect their jobs in D25 regardless of vaccination status or compliance to mandated testing of healthy teachers due to their private decisions about their own health. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Next, we have Tom Kopaz.
Thank you, board members. I would like for you to actually have a look at the real life studies that have been done, and you would have these studies in Florida. Florida did studies, as you know. Florida was not masking all districts in Florida. They were voluntary. They had 3 sections. They had 3 types of districts. One type of districts where there were mandatory masks for everybody. Second type was only teachers were mandatory to have masks, and the third was all voluntary. If you look at the studies, okay, you're gonna see that the infection rate there was no difference in infection rates. So that's one study. Second study is from Denmark, randomized controlled trial. Everybody wants those, right? It shows absolutely no difference whether or not masks make any difference in spreading coronavirus. And third point I wanted to mention also is that in the document that we are getting from the state, there's not a word mention of aerosol spread. All respiratory viruses spread by aerosols, yet there's no mention of this word in the entire document except for one footnote number 31, and I looked even all the reference documents, there's not a word mentioned in any of this. And the footnote 31, it doesn't talk about spread of infection, it talks about cleaning and disinfection. So that doesn't make any sense. This is why masks don't work. They spread by aerosols. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And that wraps up our public comment here in person.
Thank you. I do have some that have been submitted online. I believe there were 16. And according to our policy, we will do public comments for a total of 30 minutes. So I'll begin to read some of those. From Magdalena Martinez, the district needs to hold all curriculum nights remotely or have half of a class of parents in at a time. These curriculum nights have the potential to be super spreader events. This is not the kind of public relations the district needs. Neighboring districts are not having all of the parents in at one time. It is disturbing to read a message from the school that for these curriculum nights, up to 50 parents may be in one room, if both parents of each child attend. In addition, please continue to pursue tents and tables for the students who will be sitting outside for lunch. Tents and tables would provide sun protection and comfort. Tents would allow students to be outside in misty weather, thereby decreasing potential COVID exposure at lunch. From Maria Zeller Brower, I am the parent of a D25 student, and I am strongly in support of D25 adhering to the governor's mandate that K-12 teachers be vaccinated against COVID, with regular testing options for those who have legitimate reasons they cannot be vaccinated. I have a child who is too young to be vaccinated. I want her to be in school as much as possible, and I want her to be as safe as possible. I urge the district to continue to take a layered approach to mitigating COVID, which includes making sure that those who can be vaccinated are vaccinated. COVID-19 transmission in school can be sparked by adults, as research has shown. She references a website. Since there is not currently a vaccine approved to use in children under 12, one of the best tools in our arsenal to protect these children is to make sure the adults around them don't infect them in the first place. I'm grateful for our teachers and staff who've worked so hard for the past 18 months. I want them to be safe and healthy as well. Vaccines need to be mandated for teachers and staff so that we can protect those who are too young or medically fragile to get the vaccine. I expect District 25 to follow the health guidance and the governor's mandate. Thank you. From Robin Swanson, Regarding the board meeting's action item on Governor Pritzker's mandate, I am assuming that is a formality to adopt the vaccine requirement for staff. I am writing to show my strong support in doing so. Anything else would open the door to action by ISBE. They have taken a very aggressive stance on non-compliance of the mask mandate. It would be in the best interest of our students on many levels to move forward with the vaccine mandate in our district. The next one is from Alexis Hammond. It is quite lengthy, so I'm going to kind of watch for the 3-minute mark to give everybody a fair chance and read as much of it as I can. As you know, the governor's August 26th mandate continues the mask requirement and requires the vaccination of school personnel. As this is a mandate from the governor, I fully expect that the school district will comply with this mandate and any future mandates. I continue to look to the board and administration for absolute vigilance and adherence to all county and state recommended public health guidance and mandates. I do not believe the governor's mandate warrants any discussion or action from the board. I expect strict compliance. We expect School District 25 to remain an accredited school district. As stated by ISBE Superintendent Dr. Carmen Ayala, quote, local boards of education, schools, and districts do not have the authority to deny the governor's executive order requiring universal indoor masking in schools. Doing so not only puts students' health and safety at risk, but also opens the district to extraordinary legal liability, potentially without any insurance to cover damages, unquote. And Alexis shares a related website. She goes on to say, the governor's August 26th mandate reports that the, quote, Delta variant of the coronavirus is more aggressive and more transmissible than previously circulating strains and poses significant new risks in the ongoing effort to stop and slow spread of the virus, unquote. Given this known public health crisis and high transmission in the Arlington Heights zip codes of 6004 and 6005, I ask that the district adopt further mitigation strategies and be proactive in further protecting our children and community, unquote. After nearly 4 months of declining numbers, Arlington Heights is continuing to trend in the wrong direction, with coronavirus cases on the rise for the 8th straight week. That's the 3-week average. The number of new cases in Arlington Heights increased by 46% over the last 2 weeks, according to the Cook County Department of Public Health, and again, she shares a reference website. The following mitigation strategies were used last year to keep our kids safe while being able to provide in-person instruction. I ask that these be implemented again to prevent transmission at school. First, turn desks to face the same direction rather than facing each other, or have students sit on only one side of tables spaced apart. Second, modify learning stations and activities so that there are fewer students per group and students can be spaced apart. Third, mark walking paths or provide physical guides, such as colorful tape on floors and signs on walls, to ensure that students remain distanced. Consider making these paths one way for the students. I ask the district to specifically look into distancing at the middle school level during locker visits and change of classes. There's more, but with the 3-minute limit to make sure everybody gets an opportunity, we will post the rest of that, and I'm going to move on to the next comment. There are 2 comments in a row from Nathan Olery. The first one states, in a time where Dr. Bine is imploring parents to treat the board and staff with civility, and school staff are teaching students that character matters, it is disappointing that the school board members, Basso and Olenichek, participate in text messages identified in recent FOIA requests with members of the public that are derogatory to other members of the board and spread false information about them. We expect better from our middle school students, and here our elected members of the board demonstrate a lack of maturity and civility. I call upon President Filipek to publicly censure these 2 members and ask that the minutes reflect it. And the next one, also from Nathan Olery, as the board agenda currently calls for action but with no recommendation, it is unclear what the board intends to propose on the topic of vaccinations and testing. Unfortunately, based upon the board and the superintendent's actions related to masking, I'm concerned that this agenda topic is yet another attempt to find loopholes. I want to reiterate what the board heard from the district councils last month when Mr. Olenichuk was looking for another loophole to ignore the mask mandate. There is no legal option for the district to ignore the governor's executive orders. Since that meeting, it has been clearly demonstrated by ISB's actions that there are swift and significant impacts to districts that ignore the mandates. No action is necessary by the board in this case. Unlike the mask mandate, there is no inconsistent policy on the books that needed to be overturned. The governor's vaccine mandate or testing alternative does not conflict with any existing board policy. No action is required. Follow the mandate. It is time to end these loophole games. This board is here to serve the entire community, not the loud minority of anti-mask and anti-vaccine individuals in our community. We want our board focused on the education of our students. Too much time and effort is being spent investigating loopholes related to COVID protocols. Simply follow the health guidance from the CCDPH and ISBE and keep your attention on executing the strategic vision of the district. From Kevin Michael, I would like to once again express my strong approval and gratitude for Governor Pritzker's mask mandate in schools and now in all public spaces in Illinois. Masking is a necessary, common sense measure that is scientifically proven to reduce the spread of coronavirus. Despite the vocal opposition by a minority of parents, there is no health risk for students wearing masks, and there is a significant risk to the health and safety of all students and staff if masks are not worn. I'm also thrilled as a parent, educator, and Illinoisan that vaccines or weekly testing will be required for all teachers and school staff. Vaccines are safe and effective, and a combination of masking and high levels of vaccination are the only way out of this pandemic. I expect District 25's Board of Education and administrators to continue to adhere to the requirements of all state mandates regarding public health and safety. I also expect the district to continue to require masks as long as it is recommended by local, state, and federal authorities. And submitted by Jen Anderson, as I look at the rapid spread of COVID in states that are not using masks and other common sense mitigation efforts, I'm thankful for the leadership of our governor and for our local school board's compliance with those directives. I'm hopeful that same commitment is demonstrated in tonight's discussion about the newest mandate for staff vaccination or testing, and that board members don't seek out or entertain loopholes for non-compliance. Excuse me. The vast majority of this community expects our district to adhere to public health policy and have respect for recommendations from experts in the field, both now and as we move through the school year. From Amira Zabin, I greatly appreciate Governor Pritzker's mask mandate and vaccination testing requirements for school personnel. I expect the board to continue to follow the governor's orders as well as the health guidance put forth by all major national and state agencies throughout the course of this pandemic. I'm looking forward to seeing the district implement COVID testing and establish a COVID-19 dashboard. From Jennifer Gunn, thank you for following the masking guidelines requirements from the governor, the CDC, and the American Association of Pediatrics. Please keep a mask requirement in place at least until children under 12 can be vaccinated. Masks limit outbreaks, time out of schools for kids, and accordingly keep parents who work able to fulfill their professional obligations. Moreover, it helps keep others in the community safe when our kids are spreading the virus less than they would if masks were not used in school. From Laura Magnuson, please relaunch the COVID dashboard as soon as possible and communicate when that can be expected. From Jim and Christina Small, dear Dr. Bine and District 25 Board, thank you for reversing your decision on optional masking and complying with the governor's mandate. To the extent that you consider optional masking again, we expect that you explicitly inform the public in advance and take into account the community's concerns. We also expect that you continue to follow the spirit of the relevant Health and Education Board guidance going forward. While wearing masks in school is an inconvenience, this is the least that can be done outside of the other prudent mitigation standards and testing implemented for the school year. The goal is to keep our children in the classroom safely. As we can see by other school districts with optional masking across the nation who have had significant quarantines or altogether have shut down, masking is an important mitigation tool to ensure safety of our children, teachers, and staff, as well as ensure continuity of our children's education. This is also a long one, so Mrs. O'Brien, if you can help me with timing. From Doug Hammond, I'm writing to you today as quite candidly, I'm flummoxed over the board's intent to discuss and possibly vote to defy Governor Pritzker's mandate requiring masks to be mandatory for schools in Illinois, and that all school personnel be vaccinated or submit to regular COVID testing. Given the overwhelming amount of data supporting the positive impact of masking in schools and vaccination, I find this entire debate irrelevant. School boards across the country who started as mask optional have been rushing to mandate masking due to outbreaks in their schools. Why? Because school works, and he references a website. However, tonight the District 25 board will be discussing the merits of going against public health entities and Governor Pritzker. Given the guaranteed outcome of loss of accreditation in the event the board defies the governor, let alone the risk it will bring to the health of our children, it is careless for you to even consider this. District 25 is responsible for providing safe, effective, and accredited public education to this community. I appreciate that the loudest voices you are hearing seem to be coming from those who want you to go against public health guidelines and defy the governor. However, these voices seem more motivated by emotional backlash than principle. The evidence they cite comes from anonymous social medical sources. Excuse me. Meanwhile, I believe I represent a much larger majority, and polls back me up, when I urge you to follow the overwhelming consensus of doctors and public health experts, and he shares a website. Masking is a proven effective mitigation strategy against COVID. Vaccination is the gold standard of preventing infection. You need to look no farther than the week 1 infection rates at Thomas 4 between August 27th and August 30th, and what is happening around the country and states where the school year started as mask optional. They have thousands. District 25 is responsible for delivering safe, effective, and accredited public education to this community. To do any less is a dereliction of your duty. To act in defiance of the governor's mandate and in the face of overwhelming public health data is a waste of everyone's time and puts the health of children at risk. If you feel you must debate and then vote on mandating masks and vaccination of school personnel for District 25, then I ask you to vote in favor and then move on with the mission of ensuring our children's quality and safe education. The next comment is another comment from Nate Ulrey. Mr. President, I'll ask, because we already spent 3 minutes on his 2 other comments, and this comment was also shared in the COW meeting. Thank you. They'll skip on to the next one. Again, it will be posted. Carrie Hood submits a comment. Please be inclusive and equitable when making decisions for our board. Not all children and families have the same needs. Choice is part of inclusion. Practice what you preach. It is sad to see the continued lack of looking at data in decision making here. Too many are relying solely on the media instead of using CDC and IDPH published data. The local metrics have been hovering constantly for the past month or so, under 4% positivity. Cases do not equate to deaths. A quick review of published death statistics shows that kids are still not in the risk group for COVID. Excuse me. The highest risk group in any year is always the 65 to 84-year-old population, COVID or not. Please take back your local control, and please stick with your strong and unanimous decision to make masks optional. And the last comment submitted by the deadline today is from Deborah Freudenberger, and it says, Dear Dr. Bine and District 25 Board, thank you for reversing your decision on optional masking and complying with the governor's mandate. Masking, along with other mitigation strategies and testing implemented for the school year, will allow students the greatest opportunity to stay in school in a safe environment. As we can see by other school districts with optional masking across the nation, excuse me, who have had significant quarantines or have altogether shut down, masking is an important mitigation tool to ensure the safety of our children, teachers, and staff, as well as ensure continuity of our children's education. And as always, these comments will be posted online.
Thank you, Dr. Bine. One more.
This is from a gentleman who already spoke. We usually have 1 minute left. Is that what you said, Lana?
All right,
We have 1 minute left.
all right, Tom Kopaz.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Science is about data. It's not about politicians telling us what it means or what it doesn't mean. So if you look at the data, you already know that masks, not masks, but the vaccines, they are not working out the way that they promised. One of the most vaccinated countries in the world, Israel being one of them, they have an epidemic right now, even higher, bigger one than they had last winter. And a lot of people that were double vaccinated, so-called, are actually in hospitals. So science is about data. CDC already said that the vaccinated people can catch and spread the COVID virus just as well as unvaccinated. So let's make sure whatever decisions we make it based on science and data and not what politicians tell us. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, moving on, the approval of consent agenda items, and this is an action item, so I need a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes, Anisha?
I recommend that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report, an addendum to personnel report. B, invoices. C, regular and closed session meeting minutes of August 12th, 2021.
Thanks, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chad. Just by a second there. All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, hearing none. Lana, can you call the roll, please?
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichak?
Yes.
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Moving on to communications to and from the board, starting with NSSEO. Gina.
Thanks, Scott. So a couple of things with NSSEO. First of all, Dr. Hackett, the superintendent for NSSEO, has been spending a lot of time, energy, and effort advocating for equitable state funding for students with significant needs. The high cost Special Education Funding Commission currently has a deadline of November 30th to bring forth a recommendation. Her work is in support of equitable and inclusive funding for special education based on the student need, not their placement or their disability. She will continue to advocate for this every 2 weeks with communications in either written, oral, or in-person form until the plan and the proposal are fully developed. In addition, NSSEO was very pleased in their update on their Timber Ridge gym, which is progressing on schedule. It is on track to complete before the end of the year, and it will provide a state-of-the-art facility for our special education students. 825 was ribbon cutting at Minor School for their Playground for Everyone. Dr. Bine was in attendance, and thank you to all that attended that. And then the last comment from NSSEO is that special education through the ESSER funds, which we're all familiar with and we've talked about, the ESSER 3 funds, they're in the process of completing their grant proposal because they are eligible for a significant grant through the ESSER 3 funds. 60% of that is going to be spent on learning loss, 20% on summer enrichment, and 20% on after-school programming. So they're looking to have all of this spending and the way that they've written their proposal in their plan in alignment to delivering against their strategic and their continuous improvement plans, goals, and objectives.
Thank you, Gina. And just to follow up from my last month invitation to Coffee for Champions is the new name. It used to be called a Cop on Rooftop, sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts and local police departments. Our feeder communities of Arlington Heights and Mount Prospect collected well over $10,000 for Special Olympics Illinois, which I saw a bunch of community members out there eagerly donating. So thank you so much, and the funds are going to be used very, very well. I've got to attend the Special Olympics at Prospect High School and see that the look on the athletes' faces is just outstanding. So thank you for the community for donating and supporting such a great cause. Next we have IASB. Anisha?
Yeah, the ISB continues to have great professional development, which is really important for each member of our board to attend on many different topics, including effective board governance. Actually, today there was a session on what is critical race theory and really talking about what are the origins of it, what is it, and how is it different from what we teach in K-12 education. That presentation on racial equity is recorded, so if anybody missed it, that's a good one for us to understand. And then on September 9th, there's a board and superintendent proactive and productive conversation, and having that relationship being so important so that we can support the students in this community. So that's coming up on September 9th. And of course, I hope that all of us, there's many people who have served on this board but haven't had an opportunity to attend the ISB conference, and always has great information to learn about the important aspects of governance. And that will be happening in November.
If I could just add, to clarify for the board, we forwarded you today an email about the division dinner, the IASB division dinner. It had a typo in it. I think it says Thursday, September 22nd. It's actually Wednesday, September 22nd. So when you get a chance to check that, the date is correct, the day is wrong.
Yeah, and it'll be in person again, with all precautions taken. So, and that, again, that has a great conversation. I believe it is about superintendency board relationship by a great speaker. And so I know I'll be attending, and I know a lot of my colleagues will be too. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Anisha. Moving on to EdRed, we got Rich and Stacy. Let's start with Rich.
One thing that I talked about last time was just that we'd be getting together, or EdRed is ramping up again on September 24th. It's reintroductory luncheon. Recently, in fact, there was an article in the paper that talked about a recent law that was just went in, and that I think is, we've talked about it here, we've had many parents talk about it, and it's really now Public Act 102-0321, or Senate Bill 1577. The students will be allowed mental health days now. So students will be allowed 5 mental health days with no medical doctor's note. All they have to do is call in, and so that'll be considered just as an illness, and that takes effect in January. And so it's really recognition that there are, obviously students are, dealing with many different things, and it's a way to better have the students work with that. So they have the opportunity to make up any schoolwork during that time period, as well as after the second one to be referred to support personnel within the school if they need that type of support as well. So that's just an interesting one that I think all the school districts will be obviously incorporating in January, and I think it's the betterment of the students.
Thank you, Rich. Moving on to board governance framework, and that's me. I'm just going to open up easy one right to the first page, just to kind of reiterate our unity of purpose. So this one, just like Dr. Byrne, we may have to start the 3-minute timer, but I'm going to read the first page just as a reminder of this. The school board is a guardian of public trust. Board members have the opportunity to take responsibility for the success of local public education. Through the policies they make, school boards establish the standards and philosophies by which the district is run and the criteria used to judge whether they are being running well. We affirm the unique role of public education, whereby Each community collectively pools its resources for the common good through the education of its students. Therefore, we seek to uphold and improve public education for our community. We want to build trust and move the district forward. We want to become an effective team. We want to understand our individual jobs and collective responsibilities. We want to be a team with a common focused direction. We want to create a district culture that supports positive change. We want to perpetuate a positive district culture that survives in the face of board members and staff turnover. And those are in reference of our policy 220 and 280E. And given the comment or the email that was sent to us during public comment, I just want to remind everyone that this board governance framework that we all abide by is important, and we need to remember that both while we're at the board meeting here and our comments to public members are essential, that we act as a unified board and that we give the positive direction of this board no matter who we're speaking to or when we are speaking on behalf as a board member. So let's just keep that in mind. I know we have conversations one-on-one, but let's as a unified board, let's continue to move forward and act with respect to each other. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Gina.
So I'd like to acknowledge the comment from Mr. Ellery and make a public statement since I was brought into that. I do apologize to my fellow board members and to the community as a whole. I did have an error in judgment. I did check my phone in walking from open session to closed session, and I did acknowledge emails that were issued, and it was a total lapse in judgment under the fact that we were still on the clock moving from open into closed session, and it will not happen again. My apologies to my colleagues and to the public as well for that lapse in judgment.
Mr. President.
Yes, Rich?
Similarly, just with Gina, that again, I apologize to my board members, to the public, again, similarly to reading text as well as maybe sending out a text on the way to, in between sessions here in the area. One thing, though, that I would like to maybe add is that when looking at information, we always must seek to understand. And so I look at the comment Mr. Ulrey made, and I take point in his comment of saying that I made any derogatory comments toward any board member here, which is emphatically false, and I want that on the record, as well as to say that I wish Mr. Ulrey, again, if he had an issue with something that he read, ask. Seek to understand. Ask the questions, and you'll get the responses, rather than jumping to conclusions as to what is being texted or what is being stated.
Mr. President?
Yes, Anisha.
Yeah, I'd like to speak regarding our board governance framework, and thank you for sharing what you shared today. To me, the number one reason for us to keep the board governance framework top of mind and a priority is so that we fulfill our fundamental responsibility to serve every single student in this district. And so that our community understands, and each of us as board members has a clear comprehension to, I lean on my board colleagues for their input right now. And here's my question to each of you. Why do we think it is important to have a board governance framework and to spend time at every single board meeting going over it? So I'll leave that as a question. So my question is, why do you think it's important that we have a board governance framework, and and that the fact that we spend time going over it at every board meeting?
So Anisha, I would respectfully allow the board to mull on that question. The board does do yearly board development training, and I would have us think about that, and at the next training that we do, we come back and we have true and very genuine responses to that on why we choose to serve on this board and to do what's best for our kids and to do that to the best of our ability. I think that's the appropriate forum to have that discussion.
I look forward to that conversation. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to add to that. but I'm going to continue. So since we as a board have been made aware of some possible violations of our board agreements, and it is our responsibility right here, based on the Illinois Association of School Boards, the Basics of Governance, that we collectively and personally hold ourselves accountable, I want to reiterate some agreements that we must hold to. We each signed very freshly our board governance framework, and we committed to serving as an effective team. We outlined that the board and the superintendent have the right to expect performance, candor, and honesty from one another. We value clearly identifying issues and discussing them in an open, honest, and respectful manner. We indicated that we value being respectful and genuinely concerned about the feelings of others. And we have an agreement of absolutely no surprises, meaning no one gets surprised at any time in the meeting or between meetings, and the truth to no surprises is respect. And the final one I want to touch on today is that board members will represent all school district constituents honestly and equally. And since I have learned from community members that there have been misinformation and false accusations shared about me on a written conversation that two of my board colleagues were a part of, I want to lay out the facts. I was absent at a recent board meeting because I had academic obligations due to my doctorate of education, and I was not at any other public meetings in the community. Ultimately, the fact is that effective board governance leads to a high-achieving district, and fundamentally, we have to serve as a unified board. That is different from a uniform board. Our diverse perspectives is our strength, but it behooves us to conduct ourselves with complete respect and trust for the sake of our public service to each and every student in Arlington Heights District 25. And we have a lot of work to do, and our responsibility has always been serious, and it is even more so as we navigate our district through a pandemic. And finally, I'll say the board governance framework should serve as a reminder that we are here for one main unified purpose, like President Scott Philippek said today, and that is our students. And I hope that each of us continue to reflect, and I look forward to the conversation as a board on this topic regarding effective board governance for the sake of this community.
All right, moving on, we have communications to board members. That's starting with the PTA, Nicole Barbier.
Hello, good evening. The love of art and celebration of students can bring families, teachers, and friends from the community together. For over 50 years, Reflections, a national PTA flagship program, has been inviting students to explore their own thoughts, use their imagination, practice critical thinking, and share their talents. The program encourages children to create works of art in any of the 6 different arts categories: dance, film, literature, music, photography, and visual arts. Each year, the projects are created around a central theme. This year's theme is I Will Change the World By. Every student in District 25, grades pre-K through 8, has the opportunity to submit artwork to the Reflections program through their school's PTA. The Arlington Heights Council of PTA's Reflections Committee will recognize students for their participation in this program. There is an opportunity for submissions to advance and be recognized and/or awarded at the state and national levels. Projects will be due to each school's PTA shortly after Halloween. Entry forms can be obtained through your school's local unit. Also, on behalf of all the local units, we thank the parents and teachers who have joined the PTA this school year. Just by joining, you are funding an organization that puts all children first. If you have not yet joined, please visit your school's website to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we have ABC25 Foundation, and Gina, back up.
So first and foremost, we are encouraging all families to consider joining, if you haven't already, as part of your registration. Please visit abc25.org. We are also currently recruiting for many volunteer opportunities. So if anyone has an interest and hasn't found their spot on where to get involved, please check out the website. Next, the grant submission is now open for this school year for all of our teachers, educators, and staff, and it will be until October 15th. Last year, ABC25 supported $70,000 in various levels of grants to the schools, to the district, on behalf of Marion Elliott, and inclusive of the repairs to the track at South. And we look forward to be able to serving this district again with a significant financial contribution. So please consider donating your time, your energy, funding, and please, we would love to have you come out.
Yes, thank you, Gina. Next, we have the Arlington Teachers Association, the ATA, Allison Berg.
I'm smiling. Good evening, everybody. I'd just like to take a minute to update the board about all the amazing things going on in the district. I'm happy to come to shine a spotlight on our schools and to highlight some of those bright moments that we as teachers love to be a part of and to share them with all of you guys tonight. That being said, there's lots of great things going on in District 25. Many of our schools hosted back-to-school events where students were able to drop off supplies before school, see their classrooms, and meet their teachers. Some schools had back-to-school socials where excited kids and their families enjoyed popsicles and music. Thanks to the PTA for putting on those awesome events at our schools. Kids are outside playing at recess. They're hanging out with friends, eating lunch together again. It's great to see. Many schools have already had parent information night, which is awesome opportunity for parents to come into the classrooms in person, meet their teachers, and hear about all the wonderful things that their child has in store for them, their teachers have in store for their children this year. Hallways are lined with student work. Our buildings look colorful, bright, and inviting. Music classes have singing students, the sweetest sound. Second graders at Windsor are busy making their annual field trip to the Arlington Heights Library, where they learn all about the amazing programs that the library offers. They take a tour of the Kids Zone and check books out, giving us teachers just one more opportunity to share our love with reading with our children. Basketball tryouts are underway at South, and finally, cross country is up and running, excuse the pun. And hot off the press, today was the very first meet where Thomas and South met for a showdown. Congrats to the 7th and 8th grade Thomas boys and the 7th and 8th grade South girls for their wins. It feels great to come up here to report all these wonderful things that are going on in our district, and it has only been 3 weeks. I look forward to sharing more with you at the next meeting. Thanks, have a great night.
Thank you. Yeah, I made the comment, District 25 teachers have the unique ability to convey their smile through the mask. It's very special. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Just, Allison made a great comment that we're trying to obviously return to some level of normalcy, and it brought up a big, for the second graders going to the library, and just a question, is that the time they get their library card? I know we did some type of association with them. That's the real big time they get their library card for the first time.
So. I don't teach second grade, but I believe that is the time they get to go and learn, and they do get to check out books. I believe they get a library card right then and there, so it's pretty exciting.
It's that act of getting back to some level of normal.
Yes. Well, we're going to skip quite a few topics here, but Dr. K, you're not off the hook tonight, so we call up Dr. K for staffing update, personnel and planning.
And if I could just say, as Dr. K gets set up over there, he has the next 2 items, and I know that I have received a couple of extra requests for data from board members. I was not able to gather that by tonight, but we will provide that in the future.
I don't have an action item for you tonight, so that's good news. Just information.
It's always action with you, Dr. K.
It is always action in personnel. All right, good evening. I'd like to thank you in advance for the opportunity to share a staffing update with you. Each year, as we begin to plan for the upcoming school year in the spring, we identify staff who are going to retire, take a leave of absence, resign, or staffing changes due to enrollment that cause us to do a reduction in force. This is our first opportunity in the spring to identify positions we anticipate needing to fill and positions for staff to consider changing roles or to begin attracting new staff from outside the school district to bring into District 25. At the same time, we are opening kindergarten registration and then registration for all 1st through 8th grade students. We try to begin kindergarten registration as early as possible so that we can begin to forecast our staffing needs for the next school year. As the student enrollment picture becomes more clear through the student registration process in April, May, and June prior to the end of the school year, we begin to build a more predictable staffing plan and post positions that are vacant to attract new teachers to District 25. All right, so page 2, titled Staffing Update 2021-2022, I want to highlight the goals of this presentation, which is to share the current staffing per employee category using the FTE or full-time equivalency, the FTE per building, and then highlight the unfilled positions that remain open and that we are actively recruiting to fill. So the different employee categories, sorry, it's already on slide 3. Page 3, titled Employee Categories, I want to highlight the different employee categories, including our administrators, our teachers union, the ATA, our ES... I'm just going to ask, tech guys, you're not advancing without me, are you? All right, good, thank you.
That was my bad, because I thought you wanted to be on slide 2.
Nope, all good.
My fault.
Thank you. Why is it that every time I speak, something happens? I was hoping tonight was going to be different. Funny, Lana. All right, so we are on the employee categories. I made it through the ESP, the educational support staff, food service staff. We do have an interpreter for sign language, the other support personnel group, and then the 2 remaining SEIU, our custodial staff, and then the TCARN, which is the teaching and clerical assistants, and the registered nurses. All right, obviously a little hard to see from this distance, but you should have it in front of you as well. On page 4, titled FTE Employee Category Comparison, I want to highlight the different columns of information, starting with column 1, the employee group title. Column 2 is the filled positions for each group. Column 3, filled by agency positions for each group. Column 4 is the hold positions that we have board authority to hire, but at the current moment we are not advertising the positions and trying to fill currently. Column 5, the number of unfilled positions, not the greatest column in the world, within each category, and the final column all the way to the right, the grand total FTE per employee group that we have board authority to hire. So one column I think that is new and different would be the hold column, and you can see each employee group on the left, and hold, for example, admin 1 has 1 hold position, and we've had that position, if you guys might remember, food service had a position of a supervisor that we have not filled since Coletta is amazing. But we've had the authority to hire a supervisor in addition with Coletta if we felt the need was present. So no surprise, Coletta will be resigning in February. It is a position we anticipate we may need to fill when we hire somebody new, but it all depends on who we hire to replace her. There are other categories of employees that have some hold positions. I'll just point out, if you look at the ATA, there's 1.77. It's really determined by enrollment. So as kindergarten enrollment changes throughout the summer, we do have some contingency money, but we also have, as you'll see in a future presentation, enrollment decreases, so we won't fill some positions that we had filled previously, but as staff choose to go elsewhere or resign over the summer or make a consideration to retire, it leaves open a position that we may not want to fill based on the current enrollment. So while it's a unique category to hold, it helps us in certain situations where enrollment may change. So we have board authority to hire for that number of FTE in those categories, but we're not even posting them. We're waiting. The next column that I think is interesting is the filled by agency column. There are 2 positions currently that are being filled by agencies. Through our process of trying to fill these positions, we interviewed all viable candidates and in some cases offered the positions to candidates who unfortunately did not accept the position. As we approached the start of the school year and recognized that we did not have any viable candidates entering the pool, we reached out to our employee agency groups who shared their employees with us. We interviewed them and have agreed to a 1-year contract for each of the following positions to secure staffing for these hard-to-fill positions for the entire school year. You'll notice we have 2.0 FTE total, 1 in the ATA group. It's actually the American Sign Language teacher. And then we have 1 other, the quarantine teacher, that works with our special education population. Last year, we had approximately 8 agency hires, which gets very expensive. This year, I'm happy to announce we only have 2 at this point. And then the final column, the unfilled column. It's the last column I wanted to highlight on this chart. As you know, this is a unique start to the school year, and we have been actively trying to fill many positions. While we are currently advertising these positions, there's a job shortage, and we are competing with many other school districts and industries to attract new talent to these positions. So you'll notice that the largest group is the last one, the TCARN. A lot of our teaching assistant positions are currently going unfilled. We are able to fill some of them, but it's with guest teachers or teaching assistants, so it's not consistent support. So it's not like all of those positions are going without help, but it's not consistent help. They're not our employees that we can train and develop over time. The next slide, page 5, is our district buildings. I wanted to recognize that these are the buildings where we are responsible for hiring the staff. There are 10 different buildings, of which that is the case. On the next page, we will review the FTE per employee category by each building. They're all of our school buildings, then the 10th one is this one, the admin building. So similar chart. On the left-hand side, we have all of the buildings, including, all of the employee groups on the left-hand side that we just went over. And then along the top row are all of the school buildings, starting with admin. So this is page 6, the FTE building comparison. You will see the FTE by building and category of employee. I also added the student enrollment along the bottom so that you have a sneak peek into the next presentation on student enrollment. Those are the numbers, if you can read them from this distance, that were taken on the 6th day of enrollment, which was August 26th last week. One area that I think is important to recognize when comparing the different schools is the number of TCARN employees. If a building has a significant number, more than another building, the reason is because these buildings host our special education programs, including early childhood, the IS program, the instructional programs at Windsor, for students that have individualized education plan needs that require additional support. One way to support them is through adding additional teaching assistants in their IEP. So those buildings may look like they have a significantly higher FTE, and the reason, as you can see by the groups, the TCARN number in those schools is much higher. This had to come up eventually. The unfilled positions on page 7. So I'm sharing with you the number of unfilled positions that remain in our district. By category, we have certified positions and non-certified positions, and as always, opportunities to be a guest teacher in District 25. All of these positions are important, but we do try to prioritize the hiring based on the student impact in the classroom. We attempt to fill all certified classroom teaching positions and then non-certified teaching assistant positions where support is required in the classroom for students with needs. This list does bring me anxiety and excitement. Anxiety because it clearly shows we have important positions that remain open, and excitement about the new talent we may be able to invite and attract into our district to support our students. So if you wanted to check, all of those are currently active online. So share with your friends if they're interested in working in District 25. The last slide, just a shameless plug. I want to plug that we would love to hire new talent into District 25. We have many options to choose from. We are not unlike neighboring school districts also looking for similar positions, but we do look forward to hiring more staff and welcoming them this year. I would like to thank all of the administrators for their help in screening candidates and the building level interview teams for all their work in investing time interviewing new candidates for the many positions that we have filled to prepare for this school year. I need to also publicly thank the many departments at district office that participate in the hiring process to attract new talent: the food service, facilities, student learning, student services, technology, business, and communications departments. All members of the entire organization help in attracting new talent, and I publicly want to thank the departments and the school buildings for their support in this process. Finally, the personnel and planning team, Darcy, Kasha, Mary, and Carol, for their endless efforts in onboarding new staff, supporting current staff, and working with staff who are on their way to retirement. It would not be possible to keep up to date and functioning without their endless support and efforts going above and beyond on a consistent basis. I also wanted to thank you, Board, for your support in allowing me to share a staffing update today to give you a flavor of what staffing looks like as of today, September 2nd. Are there any questions?
Mr. President.
Rich.
Brian, thanks for putting this together. I especially like slide 6. So it shows that kind of distribution, shows where the staff is. I especially like the breakdown between the different components. It helps us kind of understand that volume. I guess the question, just a quick question that I have on this is, an organization of this size, just, rounded numbers, 800, based on your experience, is there, as we go into budgets and things of that nature, is there just like a normal number of, 5% or 10%, we're always going to have 10% of unfilled. There's just this natural cycle. Someone's leaving, someone's going. There's just natural movement that always perpetuates some level of unfilled. Is that something that's common, or is that just, do you really get 100%? I'm trying to recollect. I don't think we ever did, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you look at the different employee category groups, so not necessarily this slide showing the separation by building, but if you go to slide 4, where you're looking at the categories of employees on the left, I think it's pretty common to have the admin at 100% filled. Okay. I think it's pretty common to have the ATA at 100% filled. I think it's pretty common to have ESP 100% filled. The rest get a little tricky. Okay. So food service, I think there has been a year where we felt like we were staffed really well, but that year was also COVID, when kids weren't on site eating. So I do believe we've always had a need to hire more food service, or it's just overturning all the time. It doesn't stay consistent because the hours are short. So there's a lot of turnover in food service. I'm not here to say we've never been fully staffed in food service, but I think in my recent experience, we have been actively hiring for food service employees, with the exception of the beginning of last year. The other support personnel is a variety of specialized positions that are here at the school district. Those are also often fully filled because they're specialized, like our technology support and a variety of other positions like our communications director. So they're vital, they're in their kind of separate category, and we hire typically 100%, always filled. And the last one has never been completely filled. The TCARN group of employees, I've never had the ability to say we're 100% filled on teaching assistants. Registered nurses, yes, but the teaching assistant part of that group, no. And then I skipped, not on purpose, the SEIU group. I think we've been close to fully staffed with SEIU group, but we often have needs for our night custodial staff. So we're often actively trying to hire for SEIU. So I don't think it's customary to have all groups 100% filled, but many of them, yes, and others we're constantly trying to find new talent.
Well, again, I appreciate all the work you do in making sure that we're staffed, and the staff does to make sure that we're staffed. I know that sounds kind of corny, but.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that help.
There's a lot of work to get 800 people moving all in one direction and get them in one place, so thank you.
Mr. President. Dr. Kay, it was, the numbers that you showed us with the positions that are able to be filled right now, would you say that number is higher this year post-COVID than ever before?
Well, I have limited time in HR, but in my limited time, yes, it does seem significant. And among my group of other HR professionals in the area, it's not uncommon this year to have higher numbers of unfilled positions, so we are all competing with one another. So yes, I do believe the pandemic has had a significant impact on our staffing.
And as an educator and a resident and board member, the demands of COVID have been really extremely demanding for our staff and for our nurses and for our teachers. And it's so important for us as a board and for our community members and parents to continue to show our appreciation for what's happening in our buildings all the time. And I'll say again on the record now, and I know all my colleagues agree, that we truly appreciate everything that our teachers, our nurses, our teachers' assistants, and that in District 25, they are truly, truly appreciated. And hopefully, I know COVID has been really tough, but we're all in it together.
I know they will appreciate hearing that.
Anything else? Thank you, Dr. Kay. You may step down. Just kidding.
One more to go.
We're going to keep you up here because you foreshadow the next content here. It's the enrollment report. So whenever you are ready, take it away.
All right, another non-action item. This one is always very exciting to bring to you. It's the 6-day enrollment, which this year was Thursday, August 26th. Just want to make sure my presentation is up. All right, it's looking good. Excellent. While we monitor our student enrollment throughout the school year, the 6th day is an exciting day because we are able to see and compare our trend data. This information helps us to evaluate the direction of the school district. This information collected on this day is important for all the departments at Dunton, as well as, and begins the process for planning for not only this school year, but the future, 2022-2023. This year, the 6th day, as I said, fell on Thursday, August 26th. One of the goals that we have as a school district is to maintain low class sizes to support our staff and students, particularly at the pre-kindergarten through 5th grade school setting. Low class sizes allow us to further differentiate instruction, find more time to individualize instruction for our students, and can provide a stronger learning environment for the classroom community. Arlington Heights School District 25 is currently able to maintain low class sizes, and many of our constituents recognize this as a strength of our school district. Some continued feedback that we receive from our constituents is that they choose to enroll their children in our school district based on the class sizes, and this helps to build the positive reputation that our school district holds. As an example, our average kindergarten through 5th grade class average is just under 20 students at 19.85. We also understand that one of our main responsibilities is to be fiscally responsible to our constituents. Therefore, I would like to thank you, our board, for allowing us to maintain these low class sizes and for the positive impact that it makes for our students and staff. Let's dig in. All right, slide 2, titled District Enrollment Data, is a snapshot of our overall early childhood through 8th grade enrollment. As you can see, the total number of students that are serviced by Arlington Heights School District 25 remains just above 5,300 students, this year at 5,309. This is a decrease of 53 students from the previous year's 6-day enrollment at 5,362. Unfortunately, there is now a trend of decreasing enrollment from 2018, where we had a total student enrollment of 5,607, then to 5,583, then to 5,362, and to now 5,309. If we look back at our historical records from 2012 through 2018, we saw a steady increase in our student enrollment from 5,242 to a peak in 2018 at 5,607. Our current enrollment for first grade through fifth is 2,886 students. Our kindergarten enrollment is down slightly at 469, whereas last year we had 475. This number is significant for us as it helps us project our enrollment through 8th grade. We've also noticed that we enrolled 66 additional first graders who did not previously attend kindergarten in District 25. According to our last enrollment study with Mr. John Casarda, he cited the reason for the projected increase in kindergarten enrollment was identified as new construction and tear down of small homes and the building of larger homes in Arlington Heights that were predicted to continue spurring enrollment growth through District 25. I'll note again later that that study was done in December of 2018. The next slide, slide 3, titled Sixth-Day Enrollment by School, shows our sixth-day enrollment by school from the year 2014 through this year, 2021. There are a couple areas I want to point out, with our largest increase throughout the district at Patton Elementary School, increasing 33 students. At Westgate I've got Westgate and Patton, sorry. I want to look at my own chart. Perfect. I said Patton, I meant Westgate. The largest increase throughout the school district this year at Westgate Elementary School, increasing 33 students for a total population of 600. 4 other schools showed an increase in student enrollment from the previous school year. You will notice that 4 of the buildings saw an enrollment decrease this year as well. Ivy, Windsor, and Greenbrier all are experiencing approximate decreases in student enrollment, around 40 students each. Ivy's enrollment decreased by 40 this year, Windsor 39, and Greenbrier 38. Both Dryden and Olive have minimal increases overall, while South, Thomas, and Westgate had more significant increases in enrollment. Slide 4, very exciting for our Greenbrier community, titled Early Childhood Program Enrollment History. This tracks our early childhood numbers at Greenbrier Elementary School. We track and monitor our early childhood student enrollment on a monthly basis as testing for students continues all year on Fridays as students, quote unquote, age into early childhood, and they are screened for qualifying to enter our early childhood program. While this chart currently shows that we are servicing 111 early childhood students, the monthly screening will identify more students, and this number will increase steadily throughout the year. Just as a point of reference, last year we added 22 students from the 6th-day enrollment to the end of the school year in June 2021. So we do anticipate this number to continue to grow this year. All right, slide 5, titled Enrollment History, K-8 Students, Including Out-of-District Placement, shows our longitudinal kindergarten through 8th grade enrollment trends since 2003. As you can see in the green bar graphs, our actual enrollment has trended upward from 2003 to 2018 and decreased for the past 3 years. It was forecasted in the enrollment study in December 2018 that the enrollment may be leveling off, and the fact that our overall enrollment has decreased for the past 3 years in a row confirms that we are leveling off and in fact seeing a decrease in student enrollment. The blue bar graphs show the projections that we were expected in December 2018 when the last projections were completed. This graph, the blue, uses the Series B projections, which among the 3 different series, A, B, and C, is quote-unquote the anticipated projection. The enrollment projection study also includes 2 other options, which are Series A, the less than expected, and Series C, greater than expected. We have traditionally used Series B, or anticipated enrollment, when planning and comparing our actual enrollment to the projected enrollment. I'll bring that up one more time on this slide. Slide 6, titled District Enrollment Grades K-8. I want to begin by sharing that the red line, which I thought was the Series B projection from the Casarda Demographics Report, is actually the Series A on this chart. I apologize for making this error in the chart. The red line for this year, according to the Casarda Demographic Report, which is the red line, the previous slide had 5,619 students. So with a projection of student enrollment at 5,369 students for the 21-22 school year, that's currently listed on there from our 6-day enrollment, it makes it look like our current enrollment of 5,309 is not far off. But that is the Series A, not the Series B. So the projection was, if we're continuing to use Series B, which we always have, was off by 310 students this year when comparing with the Series B. When this projection was completed in December 2018, it would have been helpful to know that a pandemic was coming and a decrease in enrollment was also on the horizon. So while sustained enrollment is always challenging to forecast, introducing the pandemic makes it significantly more difficult. And I was not trying to make it look like our numbers are better. I thought we had Series B on there, so thank you for pointing that out in the previous conversation. The final slide, just a thank you. I enjoy presenting to the board the breakdown of the class sizes at the elementary schools and the number of students served at each grade level to determine class size per grade level. Overall, we continue to recognize that predicting our enrollment models is challenging, and we analyze our enrollment data frequently in order to make our enrollment projections with greater accuracy. While we have wonderful class sizes, we also know that one of our goals is to become fiscally responsible for our constituents. I want to publicly acknowledge Stacy Malik has done an outstanding job to help us set our parameters in looking at our staffing costs that enable us to support our student instructional needs and our staffing needs. I also want to echo my predecessor, who loves to call Arlington Heights, District 25, the destination district for our families that care about education and desire schools with a dedicated teaching staff. The reputation that our district has remains strong. A great deal of gratitude in large part because of you, the school board, and your goal to maintain low class sizes at the elementary level. Arlington Heights continues to attract families because of the outstanding education that our teachers provide our students. I did provide 2 more documents that I always find helpful. One is titled The Elementary School Class Sizes from the 6-day enrollment. It has the schools on the left-hand side and the grades along the top row, and what it shows is the individual classes at each grade at every school and how many kids are in those sections. We provide this every year at this time, so I wanted to make sure you saw that. And then the last one is something we update and track regularly as students enroll or leave us. We monitor this chart. At the very top, it's called the 6-day enrollment and just looks like a really beautiful Excel chart. But this is what we use regularly to watch and monitor our class averages in all of the schools. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and are there any questions?
Does Casarda offer pandemic projection?
Well, I was just happy that they said, while we want your business last year, we probably shouldn't engage in the work yet. So now we are reaching out to see if they will do it for this winter.
Mr. President, Dr. Kay, thank you so much for your presentation, not only today, but also at the strategic planning kickoff, at the action team kickoff meeting earlier this week, or was it last week? All the days are merging. And one of the questions that came up, a clarification question, is since we have a slight dip in enrollment, does that impact funding to our district? So I thought that'd be a good question to answer today as well for the public.
Yeah, if I get this wrong, I'm sure Stacy's going to jump in. But I believe evidence-based formula, did I get it right? Just the words. Evidence-based funding formula is how school districts are currently being funded in Illinois, which used to be based on your student enrollment. No longer is that the case. So if Stacy wants to expand on that, I will obviously welcome her to do that.
So that is correct, but not complete. So yes, our old state funding formula was strictly based on average daily attendance. So out of our enrollment, how many kids attended every day, calculation, and that's how we got our funds. The evidence-based funding model now looks at enrollment in terms of a principal at the elementary level. They fund a principal for every, it might be 400 or 600 kids. So a slight change in enrollment isn't going to change that you get X amount of dollars for a principal unless you have over 200 kids in a building. It's also based on, there's also factors for how many of your kids are low income, how many kids you have that are in special ed. Our low income numbers are growing. Our EL numbers are growing. So that's bringing us technically more funding, which is offset possibly by other factors in the formula. So there really has to be at this point significant changes in your numbers to really make any kind of adjustment in the funding formula. It's also looking at adequacy. So as we continue to spend down our fund balances on our capital projects, we've moved from a tier 4 district, meaning we were like 101% adequate. We had exactly the right amount of money to fund our schools. We are now a tier 3 district. But that gets us an extra $183,000 on $4.8 million in state funds on an $80 million budget. So it's not that significant for us, but these kind of changes in enrollments are no longer going to have that drastic of an impact on our state funding.
Thank you to both for addressing that community concern.
Mr. President. Brian and team, just, again, thank you. And I know you guys do a great job of trying to keep our sections down low. And in fact, looking at here, we have several sections at 14 going all the way up to, I think, 24. But really, I think the average is around 20. So it's staying within that realm, which I think is great. I want to point, can you go to, this slide, perfect. What's interesting to note, back in 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, we went through and to our discussion earlier today, we added about 58,000 square feet, no, 78,000, sorry, square feet to our district buildings, including Thomas. So 58 was to the lower 7 and the additional to the upper 2. What's interesting to note, and I kind of just saw it here, is we're right now about that 2014 level in terms of total enrollment when we made the decision to build out our school. So it's sometimes ironic how it comes full circle, but more importantly, now if you go forward then to, I think it's slide 4. Oh, keep going. That one. That if we do hit B, or that projection where we would jump up in 600, 700, 800 students, definitely we may have an issue of just being able to staff or even be able to fit something at 20. So just thinking of that, if we ever get to that number, it would be hard pressed, I would see that we would ever get to that number so quickly. But
I imagine
never
the
know.
next study will not.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. K. Now
Thank
you
you.
may step down. And moving on, passing the torch or the clicker, I guess would be to Dr. Bine. We're going to move on to the superintendent report. This is our first topic, would be vaccination and testing. So Dr. Bine.
Thank you. Some updates on vaccinations and testing. from the most recent executive order. I will start, let me get to my slides here. I'll start by saying our shield screening testing. I'm going to update these numbers already for you. We planned to begin our screening testing on September 8th. We have information going out to our community tomorrow that the company that we're working with needs to delay that start date a bit, so we'll have that information out to everybody tomorrow. There is a tremendous amount of work occurring behind the scenes to get this up and running on our behalf. School districts that have already begun their screening testing have run into some implementation difficulties. We're prepared on our side as soon as our medical partners are ready as well. This slide shows that we currently have 943 students signed up to participate through the district. We're actually at about, since I did this slide yesterday, we're actually at about 1,200 students who are signed up for testing. And then I put on the side, just as a reference, we have information that 400 of the students who qualify are vaccinated. So when you take that 1,200 and 400, we're at about 25% of our students across the district who are either vaccinated or plan to participate in the weekly screening testing. And again, parents can choose to opt in or opt out at any time. Also in our letter going out tomorrow, as more people, we start to see more people beginning to opt in, it can be a week once somebody submits the opt-in letter before a student's in the system and up and running. So we're moving forward with getting that implemented. Again, more information coming out to families tomorrow and staff. Just a reminder, that, kind of a very short summary of executive order number 87. I know the board has the full executive order in your packet. The part that most pertains to us as a school district is Section 3, which is called Vaccination Requirements for School Personnel. And it says, anyone employed by, anybody who volunteers for, or is contracted to provide services, or who is employed by an entity that is contracted to provide services, falls under this section. If someone is considered in close contact, fewer than 6 feet, for more than 15 minutes at least once a week on a regular basis as determined by the school. What that means is, when you look at volunteers, it means if someone is here at least once a week on a regular basis, working with students, they are someone who would fall under this Section 3 requirement. The executive order also says that anybody who falls under this executive order needs to be vaccinated or choose the weekly testing option. Testing can be performed on site, or if someone chooses to be tested elsewhere, they can simply provide confirmation of their negative result if they choose to go to a doctor or pharmacy, a public testing site, where have you. So I just wanted to give you that update in terms of some more information that will come out tomorrow that kind of relates to this, you are hearing, and some of our commenters noted, we are hearing about some school districts that are having classes that are having to go to remote learning. We do not expect, in fact, we do not expect many close contacts this year simply because of the reduction in 3 feet, from 6 feet to 3 feet. However, we will see some close contacts on the bus, at lunch, in some other small situations. But the thing that could cause remote learning for a classroom is the new definition of outbreak by the Public Health Department. The Department of Public Health now defines an outbreak as 2 cases within a classroom that are epidemiologically linked and that occur within a 14-day time span. So if we have 2 or more students in a classroom and we cannot rule out that they got it outside of school, the health department, this is what you're hearing in the news, is telling some schools this classroom now has an outbreak, and the classroom, the health department could state that the classroom should move into a remote setting. Another change to that part of the requirements is that for a district to move a classroom into remote learning, they must have contacted the health department first. So a superintendent cannot just make a judgment that I've got these cases and I want to put a class in remote. They must have had to have conferred with the health department. So I just wanted to share that information as you start to hear about that in the news. That's what's causing that. And again, we'll have some more detailed information for families and staff tomorrow. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the executive order or about our shield testing.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I
Chad.
have one question. So, I guess the 2 cases, what was it previously, just so we understand that, sorry.
It was 5 cases, and the reason the health department lowered that to 2 is because we now have vaccinations in our community, where originally we did not have vaccinations available in the community. So they feel with that vaccination ability for 12 years and older, we should have a lower number of cases, and therefore it takes a lower number of cases to be called an outbreak.
And Lori, how long do they go into remote? And I assume then there's no test to stay in that process.
Well, we don't know for sure, to be honest with you. We're waiting on rules and regulations from the Illinois State Board of Education, which I know they are doing their best, and we are all eagerly looking for that, because a good question that we've been asking related to what you asked is, if a classroom is put on remote, do they still have the 7, 10, and 14-day options for returning? Or will the health department say, no, in this situation, you have to do 14 days? So we don't know that information yet.
I have one more question. I know we're currently under an MOU. How does this impact the MOU that we have to, with the PTA?
Yeah, thank you. So the memorandum of understanding, we will meet again. We do have a request to bargain the impact of the executive order with our association, and we're working on scheduling that in the near future.
Mr. President, do we know, Lori, or do we know as of today, or as you're getting more information, how much of our staff is already vaccinated through either the program we offered or through their own means? Is it 60, 70, 80, 90? Where are we with that?
Yeah, we're gathering that and should have that information soon. We're very close. Again, when we did host the vaccination clinics here, we have about 615 employees who are still here who were vaccinated at that time, out of 850 employees, and many others who were vaccinated outside of that clinic, but we should have that information soon. Dr. K and his staff have been gathering that, and he is ready to then reach out to anybody who hasn't voluntarily provided that proof to talk to them about the testing options that are ahead.
I know we've talked a lot about the opting in, and you mentioned there's some additional communication. Is there some type of maybe other communication that should be done to communicate to the community, these are the steps for opting in, to get more students? Because right now, based on that slide, yeah, something 20-25%. And I don't know if it does it matter to get more, or 25% is great, or
So here's one of the benefits for participating in the shield testing I'm not sure everybody is aware of. In order to have the test to stay option, so if my child's a close contact and I want them to not have to quarantine, but to stay at school, we have to have a test to stay program in the district. If we did not have participation, so if our participation started to drop and we weren't able to offer a test to stay, or we weren't able to offer weekly testing because we had low participation, we couldn't offer test to stay to anybody, okay? So having the weekly testing, once we're able to get it implemented, does create that fourth option of testing to stay for our students and for our families. We will continue to advertise it. We did look at opt-in, we looked at opt-out, and with legal counsel guidance, decided that opt-in was really the best situation for our families in our district. I also think once it gets started, that'll spread some word some more as well. But we will continue to look for more ways to notify our families that it's available to them.
Yeah, I had kind of the same thought when I saw the 25%. I almost got a little sticker shock. And I wonder if there's an opportunity there, just something to think about, because my knee-jerk reaction is that I think there's a misnomer out there that people think you can opt out, but that's not the same as you have to opt in. So I don't know how we get in front of that, but that's just my
maybe
speculation
there's
of what's going on.
You have to positive maybe reply, you got to either opt out or opt in, or something like that. So
You
that
have
we
to
have
take action, and I
right,
don't,
yeah,
I don't
take
know if
action.
that is really out there.
I agree with Brian, and I'm wondering, because I know other districts, and if you could clarify this, I know other surrounding districts are doing opt-out. So if you just clarify that portion of the legal advice, which you know, we love our legal counsel, so we appreciate that, but just to clarify for the community.
Yes.
And also, and I agree with Brian as far as just parents being super, of course, as teachers and educators, everybody's super overwhelmed right now, but parents also really busy. So I know that that form was it was hyperlinked, and then you print it at home, and then you send it. So I was wondering, we try to be really green in this district, but I wonder if we can print a copy out for every single student that goes home in their folder, and something more to really get it out there, even though we like to be green for all other issues.
Yep. So we can definitely look at that. In terms of an opt-in versus opt-out, my interpretation of that is similar to other services and things that we provide kids, and that's informed consent, right? We want to make sure our families are informed at giving consent, as opposed to the opposite of, oh, I really didn't see it, or I really didn't get it, but we went ahead and had a child tested.
I have one follow-up question, not regarding the vaccines, but regarding testing. Is that, so what, could you explain, what would the testing look like so that parents know? Is it, you know, when I was just talking to the moms, they felt like, oh, it's just going to be a line of kids just spitting in a boat, like what's going to be happening?
So we need to finalize that information. We needed to know how many students are we looking at, right? So that now we are working with the company to determine how many schools can they do in a day, is it a certain time of day? And so now that again, some of this is still building because we've got another couple hundred forms today to put in. Now we can create those procedures with the company, and we will send out to families. We've already kind of structured a letter that will say, click here for Dryden School time and procedure, click here for Greenbrier day time and procedure. And we'll be able to tell families again, what day of the week is it, what time of the day is it, and what does it look like in their school.
Is there any way, as far as the opt-in, the paperwork, is there any way to make it easy for our parents where it's an electronic form that they can sign online and submit versus printing it out, sending it out, you know, sometimes not having access to a printer?
I think Darcy's got some thoughts.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. I'm Darcy Crea, one of the board's attorneys. It's nice to meet everyone, see everyone. I know my partner, Sarah Bochek, has been here quite a bit, so she was not available tonight, and I'm glad to be with you. So yeah, we have actually talked about an electronic way to do the opt-in for the testing, and that is a viable option. I think that what we wanted to try to do is wait to see if the Illinois Department of Public Health or the Cook County Department of Public Health here would develop some sort of form. And then we heard tell that they were going to do that, but then nothing ever really materialized. So we are working with a couple clients that, especially given their size, and District 25 certainly would fit this bill, where they're a little bit larger, and it would be really helpful for your family members to be able to electronically do that. And so we definitely, it is something that I think legally is appropriate, and we've given kind of our blessing to it. Just, we were having some difficulty kind of getting it up and running. I think many districts were. And then to answer your question, it was a very good one about the opt-out. You do have a neighbor or two that I'm aware of that have an opt-out process as opposed to opt-in, and so you are correct. The one I'm thinking of has got over 15,000 kiddos, and so very large district. And so sometimes districts that size utilize they have to think a little bit differently about, because of their size. And there is a school of thought in Illinois, there's a body of case law that says if you're going to do the thing for all of your students, like speech language screening or vision and hearing testing, there's a reason that parents don't give consent for vision and hearing testing, and the reason is that, one, the law allows it, but two, it's something that's administered to all children, not just pockets of children. So the theory behind the testing for COVID, the permission, there is, bless you, there is the availability legally of an opt-out model. I would say districts that are doing the opt-out are in the minority, and they tend to be larger, probably over, I would say, 7,000, 8,000 kids and up, just because the mechanism by which they need to get all those forms in and put in starts to just become a little unwieldy. But that's a good question, and you're absolutely right.
Thanks so much, and we're really glad you're here. So
No, my pleasure. I'm here to help. So,
since you're here.
Yes, please.
Since you're at the thing.
Yes.
Just last month, Sarah did a great job of talking to us. It gave us the legality, or the interpretation of the legality of the governor's order.
Yes.
And that was around mask mandates.
Yes.
Now, this executive order goes down to actually vaccinations.
Yes.
Can you speak to the interpretation and legality of that? Because I know we've had some parent comments on that.
Yes.
Is that something that, what gives him the power to do that?
Yes, very good question. It's similar to what, so EO 18, Executive Order 18, was the one that Sarah would have talked to you about the mask. What we're talking about here is EO 20, which was issued on August 26th. So the structure of the governor's authority is similar to what Sarah would have described to you, and it really derives from the disaster proclamations that are being issued every 30 days since March of 2020. The most recent one was issued on August 20th, and that will run, approximately 30 days. When it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, the governor usually re-ups it on the Friday before. So the August 20th is the date that the current disaster proclamation, was affected. And we have every reason to believe that those 30-day, every give or take 30 days, they will continue for the foreseeable future. By virtue of the disaster proclamation, the Illinois Emergency Management Act is the statute that actually gives the governor the authority to do a couple different things to protect the citizens of Illinois. And it's a kind of a complex statute, and it sort of runs into these different areas. And there's clear authority legally, frankly, in the Illinois Emergency Management Act that gives the governor the authority to make these proclamations, these executive orders. Now they're being challenged. There are court cases you see in the news being filed in various counties. Some are being transferred to Sangamon because that's what happens in our state, goes to near Springfield. But there's a couple now that are being decided in various counties down, mostly in southern Illinois. And so those are going to go a bunch of different ways, and then we're going to watch as those cases start to trickle up to the appellate court system. There's 5 appellate court districts in Illinois where we happen to be in the 1st appellate court district. The cases we're going to start to first see pop out are going to get into the 5th and the 4th Circuit appellate courts. So it'll be interesting to watch, said the lawyer. Now, there is a school of thought. I've practiced 29 years. I've only represented boards of ed. The school code has a section, 24-5, which deals with the vaccination of staff members and the health criteria that school district personnel have to meet before they're going to work in a school. And 24-5 is the section that talks about the tuberculosis inoculation. And then it says, so that's the legislature says that, and then it says, or the Illinois Department of Public Health or local health departments can also issue requirements based on, need. So that's clearly where we are with COVID. Now, I think one of the legal issues that's going to be raised is it's separation of powers. So does the governor and the executive branch have the authority over the legislative branch, or the judicial branch? And so I think that's the legal issue of the day. It's kind of like, does the governor hold that? We think he does by virtue, again, of the disaster proclamation running through the Illinois Emergency Management Act. There is a school of thought, however, that the legislature holds the power. They've already said, this is ours because 24-5 says, the legislature has already deigned it to be so for TB. So that's the question of the day, and that will be resolved by the courts. That's the beauty of our 3, divisions of branches of government. It will be decided, and I think there will be clarity, which will be welcome. No matter how the decision goes, clarity is always a good place. It's a good thing to have, and it makes our jobs all much easier. So just a shorthand, that's kind of where I think the legal analysis stands, but it's real similar to what Sarah would have described to you, because that power derives for the mask mandate in the same way as it applies to the vaccine mandate, such as it's called. Good question. Anything else?
I guess my perspective is, what is our authority in terms of, I'm not saying going against the order, but I'm going to say push back from the perspective, because I feel like, I understand the government has the authority to do this, to your point, the legislature technically passes, but for us to consistently be under a 30-day rolling power, right? I'm not saying go against it, but I'm saying we, as a board, he's basically coming in and against every board that's been elected has said, your power is no longer valid, and technically I understand it, the teachers, but I still feel that the choice is an important part of this, because now you're almost creating a tiered system that say, you either vaccinate or you test. And both of those are a privacy issue in the healthcare space, because you're basically calling out and saying, we now know your status of everything that you're doing. And I feel like from a privacy perspective, we are really violating that perspective. And I understand as a board, I'm not putting the kids at risk of that, but I want to say from our perspective, we do have to say that this is getting to the point, where do we draw the line? The governor can just keep extending this for the next, whatever, 30, 60, 90 days. And I understand, right, we're going to have different opinions. I just feel like we are a governing body who is basically being undercut every time we want to, do something. What is our options here? I just want to understand.
Absolutely. You don't have many, and you're, to put it bluntly, right. You don't have many. And listen, your perspective it's shared. It's not certainly the first time I've heard a board member or a member of the community say exactly what you said. And I believe in local control with my heart and my soul. That is each of the 865 public boards of education in the state operate a little bit differently. And I have, in 29 years of practice, I've gotten to see that with my own eyes. And I frankly believe in it with truly my every part of my being. I think what makes this a little bit different is that, one, it's a very novel issue. I've worked on mumps and measles outbreaks periodically throughout my career in different pockets of the state. And so I don't have a framework by which to, conceptualize this, because it's difficult. But Legionnaire's disease is another example, meningitis. There's been a couple of these issues that pop up over time. In those situations, the governor does not usually declare a public health crisis, but what happens is the local health department kind of swoops in and takes control from soup to nuts. They take control of everything. They tell you if your classes are going to be shut, how long you're going to close your building. It's locked down, and that's all driven by this. That's a little bit in the school code, but that's mostly in the IDPH's rules and regulations. Very complex, very thorough. I would say that in this scenario, what kind of the issue that is where does it begin and end? And I think, this is something that from a privacy standpoint, everything's got to drive toward a common goal. And the legislature and the governor specifically have really focused in on keeping kids in school. And they're trying to make all of their policy decisions kind of like driving into that's their true north. So anything that they can do to make sure kiddos stay in school, that your teachers are not required to go through another year of having roomers and Zoomers or kids in the classroom and kids remotely. It's an impossible way to teach, and everyone who's done that for the past year and a half deserves, our utter thanks and admiration. So I think that ultimately, there are definitely privacy issues inside there, but in times of crisis, the government can really swoop in to an extent, right? And I think what you're asking, where does it begin and end? And the other, probably the biggest issue is that if you don't follow the guidance, you'll have no immunity from liability. The board members, and you know right now that your insurance carrier will not cover you. Almost every insurance carrier that represents boards of ed will not cover for COVID losses. That's an issue. But you have the protection of the Tort Immunity Act. And the Illinois Governmental Tort Immunity Act, it's very powerful. It's considered probably the strongest of all the 50 states. And it provides immunity from liability for boards of you, all 7 of you here at this table, all the administrators, all of your teachers, all of your support staff. Everyone in that grouping is immune from liability as long as they cannot act with willful and wanton misconduct or deliberate indifference through inaction. So the Tort Immunity Act has a section, you will not believe this, actually that addresses communicable diseases. And this was written 50 years ago, before COVID was even a glimmer in our eyes. And so the section on communicable diseases, though, says that when the board or the admin makes a decision that they have discretion to make. That's really important. If you make a decision that you have discretion to make, it's a discretionary decision, you're going to be immune from liability every single time. So that's great, but the issue is that if the IDPH or the governor or the legislature or a court, so pick all 3 branches of our government, and we'll add in the IDPH just for good measure, if they tell you something, they take away your discretion, essentially is what's happening. That's it. If they take away your discretion, then your hands are a little bit tied. And what happens is that if you then go against, that, and we're watching that happen throughout the state and country, frankly, what it does is it's called piercing the veil, the protective veil of the Tort Immunity Act. And if that veil is pierced, it's literally like a pin popping a balloon. If a complainant, a parent, a child, a staff member, a community member, if they can prove that that veil should be pierced or that protection should be pierced, then each board member becomes personally liable for damages. Your administrators become personally liable for damages. And again, just getting to know me. I'm not a sky is falling kind of girl, never have been. And I do not make decisions, generally speaking, based on liability or not. We make them in the best interest of kids. That's your charge, thus it is mine. But I would be remiss and commit malpractice if I didn't explain that piercing of the protected veil, that protection of the Tort Immunity Act is critically important, especially because you don't have insurance coverage for any losses. So against that backdrop, you can kind of feel how I have some passion about making sure that you're all protected, that you are following the guidance such as it is issued in this moment, having some I have to take a deep breath every morning. I have some faith in our system of government. I believe that between the three branches of government, they will get this sorted out. I know, I don't know, yeah, it's still there. I still have it, mostly in the morning. It's usually gone by 10 a.m. But, you know, I'm somewhat optimistic that this will sort itself out and that we'll kind of move out of this phase, you know, God willing, of some confusion. But that is I understand where you're coming from, and that is certainly not the first time, nor will it be the last. And it's something that you can tell we're addressing with all of our boards throughout the state.
And I guess the last question is, like, obviously, I know in talking, you know, what Lori has recommended, the board could request for you to write a dissent, not necessarily piercing the veil, right, so to speak. But the question is, we could write a dissent from the perspective that we don't align with it, and we're not going to not comply with it. Because I think it's important from my perspective that, you know, while we can vote on it, we can make that decision, but I would ask that the board, you know, put that as a motion from here, from my perspective, that if you agree, we could at least ask our attorneys to write a dissent, right? It's not necessary that we're not going to mandate it. We're not going through it. But I truly think that, like, at some point in time, right, this is not political in my mind. This is we are at a point where we continue to keep doing that. And people may think it's differently, right? I'm not worried about that. I just, you know, I strongly believe that at some point in time, we're getting into that slippery slope, in my personal opinion, right? And if we are a governing body who needs to do that, I ask that we could. And if we say no, that's the board's choice. But that's just my perspective, and that's why I'm asking with an attorney here and understanding what our options are, or if we could even, you know, I'm not saying to break it, I'm just saying a dissent letter is just our way of saying, hey, this is what we think, and if we don't agree as a board, that's fine. But I'm just asking fellow board members to think about that as an option. That's all I'm asking.
Right. Now, to do that, we'd need a 4-vote majority, right? And I would, if I was to give you advice, I would give it some time. We need the next probably 30 to 60 days to pass to really get a good sense of where, like, kind of what is going to happen. If it's like what happened last fall, which it may or may not be, but history does teach us some things. If it's like last fall, we're bound to be entering a phase where, you know, the numbers increase, especially after Labor Day. And so I'm with you, but I would suggest that you give it probably a good 2 months. We'll let the kids get back, let you have at least good 12 weeks or 10 to 12 weeks, some kind of period of time where you can actually look at your data and then see if the mitigation strategies you're using, are they working? Do they need to be tweaked? How can, you know, so, and again, you know, I sit a lot of board meetings. You guys are doing an excellent job. The data that you're looking at is spot on. And, you know, just keep looking at that data and let it drive some of your decisions too. And certainly I know I can watch as you're doing that, so.
Do you have a gut feeling, a ballpark of when the 4th and 5th district are going to,
yeah,
the appellate courts are going to rule on this?
Usually,
days, weeks, months, years?
We think months. Well, yeah, it could be. It's going to be months. It's probably won't be weeks, but it'll be somewhere. What we're going to watch is there's 102 counties in Illinois. So we've got now adverse rulings in 2 of them. And they're actually not adverse to the mask mandate or the vaccine mandate. What they're adverse to is, does the local health department have to issue a quarantine letter for a child or a student to be quarantined? That's the issue, actually, that's percolating. There is a school of thought that says there needs to be a quarantine letter. In Cook County, they've been hard to secure, frankly. But you can kind of tell that part of the reason that Dr. Bine talked about the fact that the guidance is not forthcoming yet, and that there's a reason for that. There's a bit of a tussle down in Springfield right now between IDPH, I think, I'm guessing, and you know, maybe the governor's office, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to handle that quarantine letter piece of the puzzle, because it's kind of big. And there's, you know, it's a big job to do that. So I would say we probably won't have anything definitive from the courts. You know, it's not going to shake until, I would give it another month or 2. It's going to take a little while. Again, we're first district appellate court up here. Anything in the other district appellate courts don't really apply to you. It's not binding. It will be instructive, but it's not binding. First district, they're not filing any cases in, really. They've tried up in McHenry County a little bit, but they're quiet up here right now because it's just a little bit different population. Our vaccination rates are much higher. You know, there's just some different factors up here that make it. So we might not see a case from up here for a while.
That might add to the holding off on that, just to see how those
Yeah.
dominoes fall, and then, no, I got you, I hear you.
Understand.
The local government is important. And we are, I feel that we've got every mitigation we can. We got the kids back in school last year. We had everything we could to work through that. And everything that's happening here is basically the same as we did last year. And I think we're still showing that we can do it. Just my perspective.
Yeah, I think, I agree. We didn't run for this position so we could be told what to do. We wanted to make informed decisions. I think the line for me is the kids are still back in school. And I think that's, I think we're going to have that tough conversation when we're told that the kids cannot be in school anymore.
Agreed.
When it's a decision based, far away from here.
Out, and it's what, right, the reality of it is, we were in school last year, and case rates were in the high teens.
They were high.
And our mitigation strategies and everything we were doing were very successful. And I understand people sit there and, but I think we've proven that, and I want us not to be going backwards, that's all.
I think everyone on this board agrees that, unless there's something I don't know from personal conversations, but yeah, we fought hard, like you said, to keep the kids in school, and that's my kind of line in the sand, is that the kids are still coming every day, and I hope that's not going to be the next bomb dropped before the next board meeting, because it seems like the governor has a strange way of just putting this out right before the board meeting. So we have a 10 o'clock meeting every month. So
It's impeccable timing. Yeah. All right. Well, it's good to talk to all of you. Yeah, of course.
Is there any more questions, comments? Thank you, Dr. Bine. Again, I hope we keep moving forward, and we just. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Next.
Mr. President. Dr. Bine, maybe related a little bit to testing is, these the students getting quarantined. So if you could just clarify how the lunch procedure is working, and our students, we've heard of, parents getting quarantine letters because of lunch proximity. So if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We'll clarify some of that tomorrow in our letter as well. When we started the school year, you know that the guidance had moved to 3 feet distance between students. That guidance appropriately continues to change. We get updates on a daily basis. And now it is 3 feet distance within a classroom environment. Outside of the classroom, lunch, on the bus, should we have an assembly, student spectators at an after-school sport or at a drama performance, it has returned to 6 feet. So we have some, those 4 basically opportunities that could put us at risk for having more close contacts, because at lunch right now we are maintaining 3 feet distancing. We are not able to maintain 6 feet and host all of our students in school at the same time in all the places and all the coverage that we need for lunch. On a bus, we can have up to 50 people on a bus. There is no way to maintain 6 foot distancing, right? 6 foot distancing on a bus is basically every other seat, as opposed to we can have 2 students in a seat based on the number of 50. So that even masked on a bus, you need to be 6 feet apart. As we do assemblies, our principals are working hard on trying to have assemblies twice so they can split the population in half and have more distancing. and we'll need to look at that for any kind of performance or athletic spectators as well. So we do have more risk for close contacts at the lunchtime. Our principals are looking again at spacing the best they can during that time. Again, we also need to look at that in terms of, so we've had very small number of close contacts this year, and you'll see our dashboard should go live in another week and a half, and you'll be able to see that we've had a very small number. Having said that, if you're the parent of one of the 6 children who've had to quarantine already, right, that's very difficult at the beginning of the school year. So part of the other pieces to wrap into that include that if you're a close contact, it's not an automatic 14 days anymore. You have a 7-day option, you have a 10-day option, and you have the 14-day option. And our nurses explain that to families, and they say, which option would you like? And then we tell them their return date based on that option. So if you choose, I only want 7 days. Okay, that means you have to be tested on day 6 or 7, and you can return on day 8. Or I want the 10-day option. Well, then that means you're going to be home for 10 days, not show any symptoms, and you can return on day 11. So there are more options for the length of quarantine, and a lot less opportunity, significantly less opportunity to be a close contact, but it's not zero opportunity. When tests to stay, when our weekly testing is in place, you then have the test to stay option, where you never, if you're a part of the shield testing, or even if you're not, you can go outside of the district. Once our shield testing is in place, if you're a close contact, you can agree to be tested days 1, 3, 5, and 7 and never have to quarantine. So there's more. If you opt in. Even if you do not opt in, what we have allowed for families is that they can go get tested day 1, 3, 5, and 7 outside of the district, bring in that negative result to return for that day. I will tell you, in the most recent IDPH webinar, or the one last week, there's already one and another one this week, they suggested that people who are not in the weekly testing, what they said is you don't have to allow them to test to stay by going outside of the district. It's allowable. They stated that they know it can be a practical difficulty, so they were not advising it. We, however, have decided we are extending that opportunity to our families. So even if you're not in the weekly testing, because others are in the weekly testing, it gives everyone the opportunity to test to stay, either within our buildings or outside of our buildings. So that will be another thing. Once that's up and running, you might be a close contact, but you can stay in school with the test to stay option. So the small but important impact that we're having with close contacts right now will be very close to eliminated once that's in place.
Mr. President? Thanks, Dr. Biden, for continuing to navigate, and to all the building principals and the teachers for continuing to navigate this, because you're right, and I agree with Scott. We want all kids to be in school, and when a student is sent home within the first 10, it's it's really sad for them, and we're sad for them as well. But of course September 8th is coming up. So, but is Shields an option in the lunch space, or would that help?
So
and outside eating as well.
Test to stay. So
the little barricades.
Oh, thank you. We have those available at student request in our rooms and in our lunchroom. Okay. Even if we were to put up, let's say we went back to last year where we put up those shields automatically for everybody, it's still the distance. It doesn't negate the close contact distance.
And then lunch outside is still being looked at?
Lunch outside, we are doing as much as we can. If students are outside, there's no close contacts. Okay. You are technically not a close contact if you're outside. So we are doing that where we can.
So no, thanks for communicating that clearly to folks. And then, of course, kids always like to go home to eat lunch too, so if they want to do that, right?
Always an option that we started last year, will continue to be an option this year. If a family wants to pick up their child for lunch, they definitely can do that.
Perfect, thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, Mr. President, Dr. Biden, I just want to clarify a point that came up in your discussion with Anisha. So, we'll have a test-to-stay program. Someone can test outside the district. But to clarify, we don't have the testing program now, so you cannot test to stay by going outside the district yet.
You are correct. You are correct. Until we have the weekly testing in place, which we believe, we'll communicate tomorrow, we believe we have the new date from the company. Once that starts, then test to stay is an option. It is not an option until we have that implemented in the district.
Okay, and then just...
Even, you cannot even take your child outside. No test to stay is kind of there's 4 quarantine options now, right? 14 days, 10 days, 7 days, test to stay. Test to stay does not become an active option until we have the weekly Shield test up and running.
And then a follow-up question on the lunch outside. You say as much as we can, and I'm sure, I know we have a lot of schools, but what are the limiters to that for someone to understand? Like, why isn't this happening? Or
yeah. So some of it's age level, right, and how long it takes our children to get their stuff and get to their seat and the help that they need. I was in a lunchroom the other day and I opened 16 milk cartons and 7 straws, right? So some of that is the practicality of making sure kids can get to where they need in time to eat their lunch. It's easier at our middle school levels for them to be very self-sufficient in that way. And the supervision of how many students, right, how many are ready to go outside, some are still inside getting this. So it's more difficult at the elementary grades for sure, as well as space and location in terms of proximity to the lunchroom and where you can take them safely.
And I'll just finish with thanking you from your earlier about talking about the communication that's going to go out and how a parent could see at each school what's happening. Just having that 360 view of when there's this new thing and who knows what their anxiety might be about it. So I just want to express appreciation for that.
I should have a slide like Dr. K had when he said this is just a plug. We have a plug for anybody that would like to work for MedCal that does the testing. I believe that's probably why they're needing a delay because they're needing more people who are working in that capacity. I think we're including that in our letter as a reminder tomorrow as well for anybody that would be willing to do that. That would help our district out.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Bide. We're going to continue with the second reading of policies. This is Press 107. This is an action item, so I'm going to need a motion.
Mr. President.
Yes, Anisha.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the policies as presented by the Illinois Association of School Boards.
All right, Anisha moved. Did I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions, comments, or concerns on this one?
Mr. President, I have a point of clarification, please, on policy 210.
210.
And in light of the conversation we just had, and in light of the fact that if the governor were to move us to a remote capacity, this particular policy does include the words that we must be physically present at the meeting. Does that need modification in light of the fact that last year and potentially it could be a risk where a virtual meeting could be necessary to be in non-compliance with our policy?
So you're right, it's only under the governor's disaster proclamation that allows the board to have a remote meeting, for example, if determined by the board president or designee due to a safety impact. Without that disaster proclamation, there must be a quorum of the board physically present at the meeting. However, you can have a board member call in, for example, for some situations, like work-related situations. And as long as a quorum of the board are physically present, then you can have other board member who needs to, for those specific reasons, call into that meeting. That is the typical requirement of the Open Meetings Act. But with the governor's current declaration, board president could call a remote meeting for a safety reason. Once that declaration by the governor goes away, we must abide by this.
So that's, I guess, one benefit of the 30-day rolling, that we have control of that, so. I'm trying to find anything, Chad.
Mr. President?
Yes, Anisha?
Dr. I had some questions related to policies as well, and so I wanted to go through, because we know that there's a drastic suburban demographic shift happening, to be proactively ready. So the policy 6145 about migrant students, if you could just address that policy and how it pertains to our district, but also how we proactively prepare. I believe, as you had stated, we don't have any migrant students that we know of yet, but if that were to happen, because the demographics are shifting in the suburbs.
Yeah, so this would be a policy new to District 25. It is not one that we have utilized before. And if the board adopts this policy, it basically directs the superintendent to develop and implement a program to address the needs of migrant children in our district, including the first step of identifying migrant students and assessing their educational and related health and social needs. I've already reached out to a couple of districts in our area that do have a known migrant population. So what's a migrant population? For example, some people who might be working at the racetrack while the racetrack is in season in Arlington Heights might move here with their children, but might move later to another area of the country where a racetrack or other work is happening. So they're only here seasonally. Those are migrant children and need to be served by the school district in which they reside while they are here. That is not our school district where the racetrack is currently, but so that's an example. So if the board adopts this policy, basically it directs me to begin to identify a way to identify, are there migrant students in our district, and if so, to provide services based on this policy.
Okay, no, thank you. And yeah, those proactive measures, so that when we do, and that the projections, I wish Mrs. Sarta could do those, but seems like with the demographic shifts that we're seeing, that it'd be good to be ready. My other question is on policy 210 about school district governance. The research shows that it's really important, as we know, for school boards to have demographically diverse representation. So my question is, what advocacy and outreach steps have been taken to help our community, especially newcomers with incoming families, unfamiliar with our schools, to understand the role of the board and, in a sense, provide encouragement and support to potential interested school board candidates, because marginalized families also are not aware of the local governance system and may need extra support. So if you could speak a little to that.
Sure. So there is an indirect tie to what you're saying in this policy. This policy, however, is not really about outreach. It's specifically about when a school board can take action, right? That you have to be together in an official meeting. You have to have a legally conducted meeting. You must have a quorum physically present. You must follow the oath prescribed by the school code, etc. But what I think what you're referencing, Anisha, could be an administrative procedure if the board, or a board agreement in the future, where if the board has an interest of making sure there's more outreach to families whether we're talking about our possible migrant students or families who may not be as aware of the board's role. That is something that the board could, definitely, again, do through an agreement, or if it's an interest of the board, something that you ask me to do on your behalf. I don't believe that it would fit directly in this policy, but related to it, if it's an interest the board has in finding more ways to do outreach to educate all members of our community, we could definitely work on that. My hope is that the new coffees with the board will be one way to at least seek some input, see what kind of attendance and input the board receives, and then the board can determine if they want to do outreach in additional ways.
I think that's a great idea as far as, the step that we're taking to be out in the community more. I have a couple more, but I'm going to save it for my other colleagues to jump in first.
I was just going to make a comment. I know, Nisha, you bring up great points, and maybe just to reiterate, we were asking a lot of questions of Lori. These are our policies, so we're asking Lori to interpret our policies where it's our policies that we can, if we don't like the wording, we can change the wording, right? So that's I just want to remind ourselves of that particular piece, and even knowing that, I'm going to ask a question of that same thing, because the policy 6-260, 6:260, talks about the curriculum objection form. Now, I did a search before. I didn't find it anywhere on our website, and I know you emailed it, but can you speak a little bit more on that particular form, how it's used, especially in light of some of the emails that we've been getting from community members? Because to me, as I read that policy, that what we've instructed, or that what we're giving parents the option is, not only they can object, or if they have questions or concerns about a particular curriculum, they can use that form to better communicate to us as a means of communicating. They don't have to go through a formal grievance. They could use that form to help us better understand what their concerns are.
Yeah, so the way that form sits right now is that it goes to a principal in the district office to address that complaint. So what we were talking about in 6:260, complaints about curriculum, instructional materials, and programs, is like you have in front of you, that parents or guardians have the right to inspect instructional materials as a part of their child's education pursuant to board policy 7:115, which is about student and family privacy rights. And then if someone believes that curriculum or materials violate their rights, they have, thank you, violates their rights, or a board policy, that they can file a complaint using board policy 2:260, which is the uniform grievance procedure. Basically for that, somebody just has to send an email or, notify us that they want to file a complaint under the grievance procedures. But in other ways, if somebody has a suggestion or a complaint about a curriculum, about an instructional material, or about a program, when they reach out to us and ask us about that, we provide them with the curriculum objection form that they can use. Most often, people are, if they have a grievance, they're using the grievance procedure, or if they have a concern or a question, they're asking us, and we're forwarding that form to them so that they can fill out. And then again, that form comes to the district office for us to review the comments or the concerns and see if there's something that we need to do to address it. And as this policy 6:260 says, a parent can request that their child be exempt from using a particular instructional material or program by completing that form. Again, they're requesting it. There are some programs that by Illinois School Code do not have an opt-out provision in them, and some that do. Or it may be as simple as, I really don't like this book for my child, and we can find an alternate book with a similar topic or a similar instructional objective. So that's how we've utilized this in the past. We get very few complaints in general about curriculum and instruction, but when we do, if it's something that we want to formalize, help a family formalize, we give them a form. Usually we work it out in a less formal way.
final questions on colon 5 dash or 5:10, the equal opportunity. In your responses to our questions ahead of time, you mentioned that a diversity question is being integrated into all future interviews for D25 staff. Can you comment a little bit more on what does a diversity question mean?
Thank you. So, and let me find it in my packet here. It is. 5:10 is a personnel policy about equal employment opportunity and minority requirements or recruitment. And what I meant is, we have a selection of questions that we use throughout the district to make sure that we meet this requirement, as well as that we're representing questions that we know represent best practices in instruction through an organization that does research on answers to questions and the relationship to the ability in teaching in a classroom. But what we're doing this year as we begin to implement our strategic plan and the board's policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion is we're adding to that list of questions that interview teams will ask, a question that asks about a candidate's experience and commitment to diversity. I don't know if I listed that question here, but we have one. Oh, I think we might have provided an attachment for the board about that question. In addition, what Dr. K is working on for the future is that interview teams that we form in the district have a member with a diverse background on them, so that when a candidate comes, they also see representation of diversity on the interview team that are in front of them. So really, the shorter answer is just making sure that we're asking about a candidate's experience and commitment to diversity, since that's a commitment that we're making to our community.
To Rich's point, does anybody have any changes they want to make to these policies? Because I know the questions have been answered, these questions. So with the interest of time, I mean, we're going to be running late. We still have to go back to closed session. I appreciate the questions that we have, but I think a lot of them have already been answered for us, unless we want to continue.
I want to suggest two title changes to the policies. And Rich, I'm very aware that we're a policy-making group and body, and my questions were for clarification purposes, so thank you for that. But the DEI asset-based terminology is really important, so I was wondering if, I think it'd be important where we say equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment, that we make that asset-based language and turn that to equal employment opportunity and recruitment of underrepresented individuals.
Are you on 5:10? 5:10?
Yeah, the equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment.
So what are we defining as underrepresented? That's my only question I would ask, is how are we defining what is underrepresented mean?
Correct, and there's terminology changes because the term minority is not used. There's always shifts in terminology, and so whereas our population, even in the states, may become majority minority, and so the terminology now is underrepresented individuals. So individuals that are not represented in our school demographics. So that's one suggestion, and the second one is where we say English language learners. Then the terminology now would be to be asset-based, to value the home language, be emergent bilingual students, learners, emergent bilingual.
And where are you?
That's the English language learners one. Sorry, I didn't put the number down in my question.
Let me look. 6:160.
And you're suggesting for that in English, what?
No, to change that to emergent bilingual learners.
I don't even, what does that mean?
Here's one thing I would add to that, if that's a consideration, is we have many students in District 25 that are not just bilingual, right? English may be their third or their fourth language.
Okay,
It's
so
not
emergent
uncommon.
multilingual,
So are you thinking like emergent English learners?
Maybe we can give it some thought, but I know this is the second reading, because the term English language learners is kind of valuing, not putting an emphasis on the other languages, that the home-based languages. So I know we have experts in the room here too, but as parents, but emergent multilingual learners.
Again, if I'm, myself being multilingual, we predominantly, even though when someone comes in, we predominantly teach in English, and I know there's English, so but predominantly we teach in English, and we try to get the kids going toward English because that's what we predominantly teach in a process, right? And I know I'm stepping on all sorts of bounds and things of that nature, but by using the words bilingual, are we then saying we're now going to start teaching in all multi-languages? And
so here,
as I'm just thinking about those languages again.
I'll put this out there. If Dr. Bynum, if you could research maybe with ISB to for those two to make them asset-based.
So pull from tonight's approval 5:10 and 6:160. Is that what you're asking?
For further review.
Okay, so if the board were to vote on the second reading of policies, it would be except for 5:10 and 6:160.
Yes, please.
So I would just, does somebody want to make that motion so we're clear on that? Let the Board of Education approve the policies as presented except for 5:10 and 6:160. I mean, that motion would need to be on the table.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. That the Board of Education approve the policies as presented except for under review policies. Sorry, what are the numbers?
5:10.
5:10.
And 6:160.
6:160.
And just for a Roberts rule, does it matter that she didn't say she moved? She just, okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Anisha. Thank you, Greg. Are we good with that? Any follow-ups on that? Lana can take the roll. Excellent.
So do we vote, are we voting on the altered motion, or are we just accepting the altered motion? And
No.
voting on the
Yeah.
Yeah. So now Lana's going to call roll.
Member Olenichak?
Yes.
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Sure, yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
All right, 7-0 on the altered motion. Next, we're going to C. This is the second reading of our 5-year review, and this is also an action item, so I need a motion on this one.
For the second reading, C. Mr. President, I recommend that the Board of Education approve the second reading of the policies presented by the Illinois Association of School Boards for a 5-year review.
Anisha with the motion, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. All right, questions, comments, and concerns on this one? All right, hearing none. Lana, can you take the roll?
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichak?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. We move on to community input, our second community input of the evening. We don't have any blue slips that were turned in. Do we have anybody from the audience that wishes to step up to the mic? And seeing nobody approaching, oh, I'm sorry. You may approach.
I just wanted to point out that I keep hearing that our mitigations are working, and for the most part, I agree with that. you know, you just said it now, Dr. Urbina, it was in your email that you sent earlier in the year. I do want to, you know, last year when we were at 15%, I believe we were hybrid at that point. When we were full in person, my daughter's kindergarten class had desks 6 feet apart from everyone, all facing the same direction. And 6 weeks ago, this board voted mask optional. That is not the same as this. The mitigations are not the same. There's a disconnect here that you're not being forthcoming when you're saying that. Our mitigations are working great, but our mitigations are not the same as they were back then. So you have to acknowledge that if you're being truthful about this. And secondly, I don't even you know, feel free to not respond, obviously, but I don't understand the point of dissenting on the governor's mandate. How is it not political? What's the point of dissenting? So that you can choose not to follow the public health guidance? Of course it's political. It's inherently political because you're an elected board. But of course it's political. The only reason to dissent the mandate is to be able to not follow public health guidance. I don't understand that, and I'm super duper against it. I'm sure you can tell.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to future agenda items and topics with dates to be determined. So we have...
Mr. President?
Yes, Rich.
Based on our vote, we need to add migrant students.
To our future agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plan for migrant students.
Just for clarification for me, is that the policy or to talk about?
The policy instructs you to make a plan, right? So now we just need to see what that plan is, come back to us to say, here's what that plan looks like for migrant students.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be under topics with dates, or would that be under new topics?
We will have to add a
future topics.
Yes, okay, yeah, we'll have a new...
I think, you know, but...
It's under topics with dates to be determined.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I think, and maybe it's clear, I think there's, you know, in the name of priorities, that's, you know, we have these priorities up here.
Yeah.
That's not a burning platform right now that we need to address.
All right.
At least that's my opinion. I know you're all excited about policies, right?
All right. Any further comments? All right. Moving on. New topics.
Oh, should have put that under new topics. My bad.
All right. Yeah, we need a motion to move back into closed session, adjourn into closed session, I should say.
And I'll just add before somebody makes that the reason for closed session is to extend all of the same reasons for the first closed session.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rich.
I move that we move back into closed session based on the earlier motion of unfinished business.
Unfinished business. All right. Do I have a second? Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Brian. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We're moving back into closed session. If you want to stick around, it's going to be a while, but you feel free. Have a good night. Thank you all for coming out.